Hi Brollies, Marvin here from TechBroll.com, where we do unboxings, reviews, and sexy bureaus. And today, I'm finally ready to give you guys my full review of the new realme Book. For the most part, I'm really impressed with this laptop considering it is the first from the brand, offering a good set of features backed by some decent performance that you otherwise will only get from a much more expensive price point. Starting with a very clean, sleek, and premium design and construction, down to the hardware under the hood, the realme Book is probably the most affordable, premium looking, and performing thin and light laptop out in the market right now. Of course, it is not perfect, so in this video, I'll give you pretty much everything that you need to know. With that being said, let's get into it. I've already released a dedicated unboxing and first impressions of the realme Book, which you can check out here, but essentially inside the box, we have the realme Book, a couple of paperwork, the 65-watt super fast charger, and the USB Type-C charging cable. Now let's get straight into the review, starting with the design and construction. The realme Book features sleek aluminum construction with a very clean and minimal look that absolutely speaks premium quality. I also appreciate the subtle realme logo that perfectly matches the design language of this laptop. Looking at the front side, as you can tell, it is definitely thin, with a thickness of just around 14.9mm, and it also weighs only around 1.38 kilograms, which is relatively lightweight and comparable, if not lighter, than most thin and light laptops out in the market. Flipping it on the left side, again, as you can see, it is definitely one of the thinnest out there. We also have here the Thunderbolt 4 port, a small LED indicator, and a USB 3.2 Gen 2 Type-C port. Here's how it looks on the side when the lid is open. Moving towards the other side, we have a 3.5mm headphone jack and a USB 3.1 Gen 1 Type-A port. And here's how it looks on the side when the lid is open. Now, turning it on the back side, which is the thicker side of this laptop, is basically clean here. No ventilation, no additional design whatsoever, just pure clean aesthetic. Lastly, before we crack the lid open and check the rest of its features, turning it all over at the bottom, the chassis has this nice curvature around the edges that makes the illusion that this laptop is thinner than it actually is. So we have two speakers on both sides, and the curved edges actually give the speakers some space to breathe out. We also have two small rubber feet and a larger rubber strip right here to keep this thing stay in place. In terms of ventilation, we have a single ventilation strip right here, which as per my testing is just enough to keep this laptop cool. And lastly, we have some brand stickers here, which I appreciate, rather than placing them on the surface of the laptop, which most people will remove anyways. Now we have a nice chamfered edge here at the center that makes opening the lid much easier. Opening the lid requires two hands, which means the hinge is quite strong, which may be a pro or con depending on your preference. Opening the lid reveals the equally minimal design of the surface with just the keyboard, trackpad, and power button. The surface is of course also made out of aluminum, which is cold to the touch. We also have a substantially large trackpad with a smooth surface and clicky buttons. Now in terms of the keyboard, we basically have a 60% layout with dedicated arrow keys, rather small function rows up top, and the alphanumeric keys. Unfortunately, we lack some useful nav cluster keys on this keyboard. And lastly, for the surface of the laptop, what I appreciate here is the dedicated power button that also doubles as a fingerprint reader. Now moving on to the display panel, for starters, we have a subtle realme logo at the bottom center as you can see here. And then in terms of the display itself, we have a 14-inch IPS panel with 1440p resolution, which is quite unusual for this price point. We usually see this in more expensive laptops, so that's definitely a plus. And what's even better, at least for my personal opinion and preference, is that this display features a taller 3:2 aspect ratio, which means you will see more than usual. As per specifications, it covers 100% sRGB, but later on the performance part of this review, we will definitely test that out. It also has a 90% screen-to-body ratio, and I can definitely see that with these thin bezels all around with just a thicker chin at the bottom. Now what's good about this is that they were able to cram in the webcam as well as the microphones with this very thin bezel up top. Alright guys, with the unboxing, design and construction, and parts overview out of the way, let's finally discuss the performance of the realme Book. But before that, actually under the hood, the realme Book features the 11th Gen Intel Core processor, and what we have here is the i5 1135G7 variant. We also have 512GB of NVMe SSD and 8GB of RAM. Now let's start with the display. Again, the display features an IPS 1440p resolution display with a 3:2 aspect ratio and a peak brightness of up to 400 nits. As per my testing using the Datacolor Spider X Pro display calibration tool, the realme Book covers 95% sRGB, 67% NTSC, 72% Adobe RGB, and 72% P3 color gamut. Unfortunately, at least for my review sample, the sRGB coverage is not 100% as advertised. Nevertheless, looking at the display and as per my experience, it still produces vibrant colors with good contrast levels and decent viewing angles. However, another downside is the glossy finish of the panel, resulting in the unwanted glare as you can see here, which I find distracting depending on the lighting situation around my environment. On the other side of things, another good thing about the display is the 3:2 aspect ratio. Again, at least for my personal preference, because this essentially gives me more real estate to work with, especially for browsing websites, working on spreadsheets, and even for video editing. So as you can see, productivity should be a better experience with this aspect ratio. However, media consumption is another story. Since most videos are still in widescreen 16:9 aspect ratio, expect black bars on the top and bottom part. Personally, it doesn't bother me at all. But of course, your mileage may vary. Speaking of media consumption, again the colors are vibrant with good contrast levels and details. And partner that with the higher 1440p resolution and decent stereo speakers, media consumption is pretty good with the new realme Book. So at this point, media consumption and productivity boxes are checked. How about gaming? Well, gaming is really not the strong point of the realme Book or any thin and light laptop for that matter, but as per my testing, the realme Book is still quite capable of pushing decent frame rates, though the experience is not that ideal, especially for fast-paced FPS games with 60Hz panel, a low-profile keyboard, and one of the downsides of this laptop, a quite limited 8GB memory that unfortunately is not expandable. And though Valorant and CSGO are playable with decent FPS on our benchmarks, I've experienced some frame drops or stuttering that ultimately affect the overall gaming experience. Again, like I said, this wasn't built for gaming and I just wanted to test that out as part of this full review. As per my testing, 4K video editing is also possible even with only 8GB of RAM, and while it took 30 minutes to finish exporting our standard 13.92-minute 4K project, it's still nice to know that I have a backup machine to rely upon in case I encounter a problem with my main workstation. Now, in terms of battery life, the realme Book features a 50Wh battery, and as per specifications can last up to 8.5 hours for office tasks and 11 hours for 1080p video playback. As per my own testing, using PC Mark 10's battery life benchmark, at maximum brightness, the realme Book lasted around 5 hours and 26 minutes, and at 50% brightness, lasted around 7 hours and 29 minutes, which is right around the specified numbers give or take. It also lasted 7 hours and 55 minutes on video test at 50% brightness. So I think it is safe to say that you'll get around 5 to 10 hours depending on your usage. Now before we move on, here's the rest of the benchmarks that I did with the realme Book. Wrapping up my thoughts about the realme Book's performance, let's go back real quick to the peripherals, starting with a webcam and a speaker test. Hi guys, so this is a webcam and microphone test for the realme Book. So mic test, 1 2 1 2 1 2 3. Now, the speakers can definitely output loud volume levels, and while it's nowhere near a dedicated pair of speakers, it is decent enough for casual media consumption and gaming. And since we still have a 3.5mm headphone jack, you can always plug in your favorite IEM and headphones. Ports availability wise, obviously for a thin and light form factor like this, there will be some compromises, so a decent USB hub like this Ugreen USB-C multifunction hub should always be around. Now, in terms of my experience with the keyboard, the keys have decent travel distance and tactile feedback for such a thin form factor, which to be honest, I was able to get used to in just a short amount of time. However, there's one thing that annoys me the most, and that is the unfortunate flex on the surface, resulting in some annoying rattling sound while typing on the keyboard. Here's a quick sound test so that you can have a better understanding of what I'm talking about. By the way, the keyboard has a white backlight with up to 2 levels of brightness. As for the trackpad, it is accurate and the left and mouse clickers are tactile and responsive. I also appreciate the dedicated power button that also doubles as a fingerprint reader, which as you can see here is quite snappy and works almost instantly. So I guess that wraps up all my thoughts and experiences when it comes to the new Realme Book, and for the most part, my feedback is quite positive with some cons here and there, but ultimately, I still feel the Realme Book is one of the most affordable, premium looking and performing thin and light laptop out in the market right now. All its cons I feel like I can live with, except maybe the non-expandable 8GB of memory. But even with that, I'm still going to use this as my main laptop since I'll be using this mostly for office tasks like emails, web browsing, meetings, probably NFT games and casual games, and media consumption, and as a backup for my main workstation. And there you have it guys, thank you for watching. Huge thanks to Realme for letting me experience the new Realme Book, and you can get this from the link below. Thank you for watching, subscribe if you like this, and see you next time. Have a great day guys, you're awesome.